Alright everybody, welcome back for another video. Today I wanted to talk about abortion. Now, if you've been paying attention to the news, you might have heard that today a new abortion bill was signed into law by a female Republican, no less. And we're talking one of the most restrictive, if not the most restrictive abortion bill in United States history. I mean, this is just, well, it basically undermines Roe v. Wade. Now, we can get into that, but that I'm going to save for another video, that topic. Now, this one kind of hits close to home for me personally because of my own experience, which I'll share briefly, the gist of it. Now, I believe abortion is used as a weapon against men in certain circumstances, as it was used against me. Now, in my case, my girlfriend and I got pregnant. It takes two to tango. I'm not into, you know, if you're going to sit there and tell me it's all my fault or it's all her fault, one way or the other, that only one side is responsible for her getting pregnant, sorry, I reject that. It takes two to tango. Now, is it a mistake? Well, I don't know. That's for everybody else to decide. That's kind of the point of this video, actually, is to help me figure out, you know, what is a mistake as far as that goes, as far as reproductive rights go, as far as producing biological offspring. So in my situation, I'll say we got pregnant. Okay, a shared responsibility here. We got pregnant. Now, unfortunately, my son's mother did not want me in her life, or in his life, rather. She did not want to raise him together as a family, which I very much wanted. I tried to marry her. She did not want to raise him on her own as a single parent, and what baffled me most was the fact that she did not want me to raise him alone as a single parent. She did not want me involved in his life, period. End all, be all, that was the bottom line. So she did use abortion as a weapon against me, and here's how. I had a certain window of opportunity in which to sign paperwork that would have given me the right to fight for custody of my son in court. My window of opportunity to sign that paperwork fell inside of her window of opportunity, which was much larger, to get an abortion. See where I'm going with this? Yeah, that happened. Okay? She called me an hour before my window of opportunity to sign those papers was going to close, to ask me if I had signed them. And I said no. She said, okay, I'm coming home. So basically, she used the threat of abortion to prevent me from fighting for custody. And knowing that I am pro-life, she knew that I wouldn't sign those papers, because that meant that, yes, I'd have the right to fight for custody, but what good is it to fight for custody over a dead child? No good at all. I wanted him to have the chance at life, with me or without me. Was that a tough decision? Oh yes. Make no mistake about it. That was perhaps the most difficult decision I have ever had to make. I mean, we're talking about, if you're a man, and I know a lot of people will say, you know what, men's emotions and men's feelings aren't the same as women's feelings. Well, if you've never produced biological offspring, you just wait until you do. And then you come and talk to me about how deep your emotions run on the topic. Because until you do, you really don't have a say. You really don't have a say. So basically what I want to get around to is discussing the pros and cons of this incredibly restrictive legislation. Now, we all know that The pendulum swings to one extreme and then it swings back in the other extreme. And it seems like now it's swinging back in the other extreme toward, well, I don't want to say the right, but towards the side of pro-life, which is great. But this bill is so restrictive that it penalizes doctors, as in it's a felony now in those states that have adopted this legislation. And off the top of my head, I apologize, I can't remember which states those are. But it's basically a felony that will get them 99 years in prison. 99 years. That's basically a life sentence. Now, I'm sure there are a lot of doctors out there that are in strong opposition to this bill because it provides no exemptions for cases such as rape or incest. And even I think that's going a little too far. Actually, let me backtrack. I think that's going a lot too far. To make no exemptions in the cases of rape or incest, even when I think about my situation, would I have wanted such a legislation behind me as a potential father, as someone who had the opportunity to raise my own son and could do so because, let's say that abortion was that illegal in the state where this happened with me? She wouldn't have been able to get an abortion, period, at all. I would have had free reign to fight for custody for my son, and I probably would have gotten custody, given the circumstances at the time, which would have been difficult. Yeah, raising a person by yourself, being a single parent, I've never done it, but I can only imagine it's not all that pleasant. At the same time, it's probably the most joyous experience a person can ever have. So, let's also consider the fact that Islam is quickly rising in the United States. And I'm probably going to get this video banned, if not worse. But I'm just going to say it. Before I say it, let me go grab a lighter real quick. There is plenty of rape and incest in Islam. I'm not talking about Muslim culture. You could say the same thing about many different Muslim cultures. Some Muslim cultures may have rape and incest to a more or less extreme degree than others, but the bottom line and the fact is that rape and incest are enshrined in the doctrine of Islam. Now, I don't care who believes me, I don't care if you don't agree with me, those are the facts. I don't care if you don't like me for saying it, I'm going to say it. Simply because people don't want me to. Tell me not to do something, that's probably exactly what I am going to do. So, it's going to be interesting, in my opinion, to see if this legislation holds. No doubt it will go to the Supreme Court. No doubt it will be amended later on down the road. But if you're a pro-lifer, before you start celebrating, let's stop and think about some of the ramifications of such an extreme bill. Let's imagine that, well, actually we're not going to have to imagine it for very long, because it is going to come here just like it is prevalent all over Europe. Islamic rape and incest, grooming gangs. We're talking young men that grow up in an ideological culture that allows for the molestation of women. Okay? I'm talking a legal code that allows for this. A molestation of prepubescent girls. Now imagine you have a daughter, and there's plenty of Muslims in your community, and they have some political power, and maybe there's a grooming gang down the block, and your daughter gets wrapped up in this, and she gets pregnant. Whether through rape or maybe by a boyfriend, maybe it was consensual, who knows, but she decides she doesn't want that baby anymore. Under this kind of legislation, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing you can do about it. She's going to have her jihadi baby, because no doctor's going to want to perform the abortion. In the case of incest, and yes, there's plenty of incest in other cultures. If you're going to point the finger at white people, go ahead. Yeah, plenty of white people have engaged in incest. in the past. We've kind of figured out by now that it doesn't really work, that it's bad for hereditary diseases, it's just immoral, you know, those kinds of basics. But Islam hasn't figured that out yet. Or if they have, they deliberately leave it there because, well, I mean, you can't really break apart Islam. Remember, Islam is complete, perfect, universal, and eternal. How are you going to mess with that? You can't. So you can't remove those specific elements out of Islam that you don't like and toss them away and just keep the good parts. Just like you can't remove the lack of exemptions from this legislation and keep the part you want. Unless by amendment. Now, as far as abortion being used as a weapon against men, and yes, I maintain that in my case, abortion was used as a weapon. I mean, I don't want to say anything. I find it difficult to avoid saying anything negative about his mother because that's basically all I've got to say. Right? That's all I've got to say. She was vindictive. She was manipulative to a degree that would blow your mind. And she did deliberately and intentionally and knowingly use the abortion laws in the state that we were in against me. Knowing that it tortured me. Knowing that I was pulling my hair out. I was a literal emotional and mental wreck over this. But by the time he was born, I got to cut the umbilical cord. I held him. I cried. And I placed him into the arms of his newly adopted parents so that he could have a life that I couldn't provide for him. And someday I hope to meet him. So think about this legislation. Do you think maybe it went a little too far? I do. If you don't agree, well, feel free to leave a comment down below and explain why. But I see all kinds of problems coming down the road, later on down the road, as a result of this legislation, specifically as it relates to the influx of Islam in the United States. Because I have no doubt that in the not too distant future, we are going to start seeing multitudes of grooming gangs, multitudes of instances of rape all across the country by Muslims. Right? They're going to try and pin it on white guys, of course. You know, white nationalism, white supremacy, that's the big boogeyman nowadays. And we all know that it's a bunch of hogwash. Horse shit. So that's going to continue until it fizzles out, as everything does. But Islam isn't going to fizzle out. And those restrictive abortion regulations and rules and legislation, that's only going to work in Islam's favor because you know they pop out kids right and left. They're popping out little jihadis all over the place. And if they get a hold of your daughters, what are you going to do? What are you as a father going to do? If your daughter gets pregnant, either through rape or from one of these grooming gangs or from being put into a prostitution ring, what if your daughter is underage and gets pregnant in a state where she cannot have an abortion? How are you going to handle that? Are you going to go to another state to get it done? Or are you going to fight to overturn this legislation and maybe loosen it up a little? Maybe try and find some middle ground that makes a little more sense than complete abolition of abortion with no exceptions. Rate, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think, and I hope you all have a great day.